It seems like at least once a week, preferably on Sundays, Donald sits down for a new interview. I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he desperately needs attention. This week, he showed up on MSNBC's Meet the Press and told host Kristen Welker, hope you guys are sitting down because this is new, that everything bad in the economy is Joe Biden's fault and everything good. Hmm, what exactly is good in the economy? Anyway, everything good is because of Donald. Now, to watch him. I want you to watch him make up numbers on the fly. This is a mad skill.
People, it didn't matter what they made because they were losing their shirt because of costs. Now take a look at what happened. Oil is down, gasoline is down, groceries are down, eggs. You were the one that asked me. You asked me about eggs. It was the first week. I didn't even know anything about what were you talking about. Egg prices were so high you couldn't buy eggs. They didn't have any eggs. And they said Easter is going to be a disaster. Well, we had Easter at the White House, and we had thousands of eggs, and they were down 87%.
Yeah, a lot of that, of course, spike was because of bird flu. But when does it become the Trump economy?
Why do you say that?
Well, tell me,
we had the same bird flu as he had.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. You're the host of Meet the Press, and you are not going to push back on any single one of those egregious lies. What is the point of you? If you were just going to sit there and whitewash this criminal's horrific lies about what is actually going on in the United States economy because of him. Also, the fact that there were a lot of eggs at the Easter egg roll has nothing to do with egg prices. What it means is that Donald Trump spent huge amounts of taxpayer dollars and wasted it on buying eggs that were essentially going to be thrown out. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, by the way, you know, which keeps things called statistics, hence the name of the organization, actually keeps track of these things, Kristen Welker, and you could have consulted their numbers in order to push back against the easily refutable lies Donald Trump just told. Egg prices spiked 60% in March compared to 2024. They are not down, they are increasing. Thanks in part, yes, to bird flu, which even Donald admits is the same bird flu under him as it was under Joe Biden, but also thanks in part to Donald Trump's policies, not Joe Biden's. Like, how hard is this to fact check a liar, a known liar in real time? Did you not know all of these things ahead of time before you had that man on your program? Anyway, then Donald moved on to gas prices, where, shockingly, he told more lies.
And I want to talk about China, but just staying on this idea of the economy. On the eve of your inauguration, the stock market spiked. You called it the Trump effect.
It spiked because I was elected president. Well, it spiked because of anybody else. It spiked because they see what I'm going to do. They know what I'm going to do with the tariffs and everything else. And I think it's actually working out better than we anticipated. Did you see oil prices? Did you see gasoline is now below, in many cases, in many states, below $2 a gallon, $1.98, $1.99, $1.97?
Well,
fact check, false. So difficult to do that. According to the American Automobile Association, a relatively well-known organization, the national average for gasoline is $3.17 a gallon. Mississippi has the lowest gas prices at $2.66. So no, gas is not $1.87 like Donald claimed, and pretty much anybody with what are those things that we carry around with us? What are they? They're like little tiny personal computers. Anybody with one of those could easily Google what is the average gas price in the United States of America. And you know what? You could have done it while you were sitting there with that fucking idiot. I guess If you did that, you wouldn't get that gig on Fox you're clearly gunning for. Donald also made false claims. Why do we even bother? Of course he did. During a speech at the University of Alabama. And I want to give context here. It wasn't a speech at the University of Alabama. It was supposed to be a commencement address. He was speaking at a graduation at the University of Alabama where I don't know, I think the mission of any speaker is to motivate and elevate the graduates and give them hope for the future. Talk about their futures. Talk about what they want, how they want to change the world, right? But no, Donald talked about things like gas prices. On Twitter, his video footage was slapped with a community note that said that Donald's numbers were false. And in order to prove it, they added 4 legitimate sources. Now, when asked if Donald's tariffs would make prices worse by Kristen Welker, he went on a bizarre rant, and I apologize for this, about dolls and pencils. I cannot explain it. You are just going to have to try to understand it for yourself. Good luck.
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls because what we were doing with China was just unbelievable. We had a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars with China.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying
they don't need
Americans
$30.
could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have 30 dolls. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
Well, you know what? I think that Donald should not be allowed to have more than $3. How about that? Like, in what universe does he get to make the choices? Like, is that American? Like, these guys talk about communism all the time. So they want the government to be making choices about, all sorts of things. A woman's right to choose whether she has control over her own body, where you can travel, and now how many dolls you're allowed to give your daughter. The idea that Donald Trump is talking about how many dolls another parent's child should have is deeply, deeply creepy. So please stop it, first of all. And secondly, stop being such a communist, Donald. It's offensive. Actually, what I really want is for you to stop being a fascist, but you are one. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. I'd say that he's clearly losing his mind, but he's never had much of one. And I think it's past time that we stop waiting for the day when his mind is going to be gone completely. Because in the meantime, so much damage is being done. And so many lies are being told without pushback. Fabulous. So while Americans are being told not only not to expect relief by Christmas, because that is the message here. He's not randomly out of nowhere saying that just for philosophical reasons, children should not be allowed to have more than $3, that $30 is too many. He's saying that because he knows the shelves will be empty just in time for Christmas. It is the fascist Republican Party that is starting this war on Christmas. And yet, somehow, Donald is finding the money for his, check it out, massive military parade being held in honor of that creep's birthday. Take a look.
We're going to have a big, beautiful parade.
A military parade?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We're going to celebrate our military. We have the greatest
what's the
military in the
price
world.
tag, Gina?
People, peanuts compared to the value of doing it. We have the greatest missiles in the world. We have the greatest submarines in the world. We have the greatest army tanks in the world. We have the greatest weapons in the world. And we're going to celebrate.
Yeah, that's what we're celebrating. That's what we're spending in excess of $90 million to celebrate. It's just total coincidence that it happens to be on your fucking birthday. Does our military need to be celebrated? I mean, I think the fact that we budget almost $1 trillion a year for said military, I think that's a show of support. It's a wildly inappropriate one because the fact that we spend that much money on our military is hideous in my view. But I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people in this country support and celebrate our military. Maybe not the ways we should, but I also don't think it requires a parade. The parade is for Donald Trump. And when he says it's peanuts, he is showing his contempt for you because he doesn't understand what it means to live day to day or paycheck to paycheck. He never will. And he doesn't care that the majority of Americans have to worry about those things because of him. Of course, Donald continued to spiral out about his egregious immigration policies and his perceived political foes. But before we go on, please remember that Mary Trump Media is not corporate media. We will not and never, we have not and will not ever bend the knee. We are not for sale. Our goal here is to expose the lies the Trump regime tells and continues to try to bury with the help of many in the corporate media. Independent media survives because of people like you. So please like and share our videos and subscribe to our channel if you're on the same page. Unsurprisingly, Americans are not happy about what Donald has done to the economy, which has gone from being the strongest in the world to being among the worst. They're also unhappy with his illegal handling of immigration, which is, I'm sorry to say, getting worse and more cruel and more fascistic on a daily basis. Now, when asked about the laws of the land, Donald came across as the ignorant fool he is, just proving the point that he's clearly never read the Constitution and has no interest in what it has to say about his role or the limits placed upon it. Take a look at what he had to say at the quote unquote ridiculous notion that everyone in this country should have due process in a court of law.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr.
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment.
I don't know. It might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Is anyone in your administration right now in contact with El Salvador about returning Abrego Garcia?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the Attorney General that question.
You don't know. It's convenient how much Donald Trump doesn't know and doesn't bother to learn. He's incapable of learning, of course. But the fact that the sitting president of the United States thinks that only lawyers understand due process, that only the Supreme Court's judgment here is what matters, should terrify you, especially if you voted for him, because you're not safe. The Constitution says what it says. The Fifth Amendment says what it says. Now, the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court may indeed render a decision that makes the Fifth Amendment inoperative, but that would be unconstitutional of them to do. Just because the corrupt, illegitimate Supreme Court supermajority says something doesn't mean it's constitutional. It just shows us how willing they are to place their ideologies over our Constitution, which also should terrify you. So here we are with a sitting president of the United States pretending that the Constitution does not apply to him because he's never read it. And two, telling us that he doesn't know something that he absolutely should know about somebody who was in this country legally, who was basically disappeared and sent to a gulag in another country because he wants to get away with it. You know, Donald did not put his hand on the Bible at his most recent inauguration. And I have my thoughts about that. Maybe he thought that lightning would strike if he did, although I think we're way, way, way beyond that. Um, but despite not putting his hand on the Bible, and I really don't understand why anybody does put their hand on the Bible at an inauguration, you should be putting your hands on the Constitution of the United States of America, which includes this oath that Donald repeated on January 20th, 2025. And by the way, it meant as little then as it did when he did the same thing on January 20th, 2017. Quote, I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of president and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, unquote, which apparently is a synonym for setting it on fire. If there's one thing Donald hates more than the Constitution, or being bound by it, perhaps, it's being called out, especially by a woman who is infinitely more brilliant and fearless than he is. Here's Donald lashing out at one of his fiercest critics. This is Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
I look at the Democrats, they're in total disarray. They have a new person named Crockett. I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person. And they said she's the future of the party.
Wow. He's calling Jasmine Crockett a low IQ person. Can't imagine why. Must be something about her personally. But for one of the lowest IQ people I've ever met in my life, saying this about Crockett, who is a lawyer from Texas and is a brilliant politician, is a bit beyond the pale. But of course, it's because she is smarter than he is. She is stronger than he is by far, and she's very, very popular. She's become increasingly popular since the Trump regime began, because part of her appeal is that she's never afraid to call out his idiocy. Here she is with a perfect response to Donald's comment. She tweeted, quote, for you to be in charge of the whole country, you sure do have my name in your mouth a lot. Every time you say my name, you're reminding the world that you're terrified of smart, bold Black women telling the truth and holding you accountable. So keep talking, unquote. That sounds like a gauntlet being thrown to me. And I would not be surprised if Donald responded with silence, because he is so terrified of strong women, strong Black women in particular, especially strong Black women who are smarter and braver than he is. A pro tip, though, for the rest of the Democratic Party: pay attention to Representative Crockett. Thank you so much. Now, there was one answer that Donald gave that actually did catch me off guard, and continues to surprise me. We have all heard about Donald's threats, supported by the fascist Republican Party, to serve a third term. I mean, I actually don't think he was going to run for a third term. I think he was just going to stay and dare people to kick him out. But here's his response when asked about his plans for a third term.
Are you seriously considering a third term, Mr.
No,
President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution? Or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican.
Okay, then. First of all, once again, Donald showing that he's never read the Constitution. It is an amendment in the Constitution that says that you cannot run for a third term as president. It doesn't say anything about consecutive or not. So that's embarrassing. But what surprised me is that I'm convinced that he has every intention of staying in office for a third term if he can get away with it. The only thing I can think is that this is a better way, to be coy about it, to pretend that he's suddenly going to follow the rules that say that you cannot run for a third term. It's just a way to get people to beg him to do it because he so desperately needs that, right? It's also a way to profit because the more he kind of plays hard to get, the more people are going to want him to do it, people of a certain kind. And the more that merchandise is going to be in demand, you think he's not getting a cut of the Trump 2028 merch? I'm pretty sure his sons set this whole thing up. So, yeah, they're getting a cut. Again, I'm not saying that he's not telling the truth. Sorry. Who am I kidding? Of course he's not telling the truth. He never tells the truth. So I would still be shocked if he indeed was being truthful when he said he had no intention of running for a third term. And there's another reason too. The idea that Donald Trump will support anybody to succeed him is kind of beyond my comprehension. His terribly fragile little ego won't allow for that or for the idea that anybody is worthy of succeeding him. So let's not be fooled. I'm going to keep an eye. I'm willing to admit I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but it's early days yet. I'm pretty sure that by the time, if we ever do get to year 4, we're going to start hearing about the fact that, 4 years just isn't enough for him to undo all of the damage Joe Biden did in the Pleistocene era. Anyway, keeping an eye on that, and here's hoping I'm wrong, which is probably the only time you will hear somebody with my last name say that. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.